The meeting of the Board of Ellis County Commissioners will now come to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Donna, you may call the roll.
Commissioner Dean Hazelhorse.
Present.
Chair Commissioner Butch Schleier.
Present.
Commissioner Dustin Roth.
Present.
We have a quorum present.
Okay, thank you. Any changes to the order of business? Okay. Prior minutes, April 13th, 20th, and 22nd. Any changes?
Just the changes, I believe, that Darren made was the only
Okay.
corrections.
Yeah, no.
Darren didn't have any changes, did you?
I thought he changed language.
That was last.
Was that on the 13th or the
Well, I think
20th?
Bill added something to the
Maybe
road
it was
tour.
Bill. I seen
Yeah.
somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Added to it.
Oh, Bill
Bill
did.
did
On the
add.
mileage.
Yep,
on the
that's
mileage of your
correct.
road tour. Yeah.
Okay, the minutes stand as presented. I need a motion for the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion, approve the consent agenda items A through G.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Any issues from persons not on the order of business? Okay. And we'll go to the next agenda item, request for assistance from the City of Ellis. Bill Ring.
Good evening, Commissioners. Bill Ring, Director of Public Works. Before you tonight on the in the agenda packet, and this is an annual request where the City of Ellis reaches out to us to assist with their summer paving. We do the same with the City of Hayes and the City of Victoria. So I referenced in here this, and there's a map showing the area that they're looking to get us help with. Our crews have looked it over, the supervisors. It's maybe 2 to 3 days' work, so it's in line with what we normally do over there. I referenced in last year, we did 48,000 square yards last year. They're looking for approximately 57,000 square yards of help. They will pay for all the materials, the oil, the chips, whatever. So it's,
When do you plan to do that, Bill?
we will schedule them over the summer when it works best for them. Usually it's towards the latter part. They like to do most of their paving in August.
Mhm.
And so we'll just, assign a crew for 3 or 4 days, whatever it takes to get over there and assist them. It's basically bringing the chip spreader, a couple of dump trucks, a roller or two,
Okay.
and we just work hand in hand with their city crews.
Mhm. Comments? Questions?
Nope, we do it every year. Got a good relationship there, so.
Yes, we're going to try to maintain that. I need a motion.
I move the commission approve the Public Works Department provide assistance to the City of Ellis with both the equipment and labor. The City of Ellis will furnish the oil and rock.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Okay, our next agenda item is the COVID-19 update and office openings. Darren.
Good evening, Commissioner Darren Myers, Interim County Administrator. Tonight, a couple different topics in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic that's we're faced with here in the county. A couple different things to discuss, and Jason's going to come up and give an update as well. I don't know if he wants to do that from the beginning, but kind of give us the status of Ellis County and where we're at. I think nothing's changed over the last couple of days, but I think he had a little something prepared for you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jason Kennedy, Ellis County Health Services Director. Like Darren said, we're going to kind of hit this together. There's a couple of different topics regarding COVID right now. One of them is the reopening of county offices, which with regard to reopening of county offices, what you see before you is actually the same document that you saw back in March 30th, pretty much laying out CDC and KDHE guidelines as they regard to business places. The only addition that I do want to hit, I wasn't going to go through this all again. The information hasn't changed. We still want to allow employees to protect themselves. We want to still encourage good hand washing, good hand hygiene, all that kind of stuff. The only thing that was added to this is about halfway down the page, you'll see use personal discretion and encourage the use of cloth masks if social distancing cannot be maintained. That's really the only recommendation that has changed from March 30th till now as far as businesses pertain. The rest of the stuff needs to maintain, stay in place. We still want to encourage employees to stay home if they're sick. We want to encourage employees to wash their hands, protect themselves, maintain that social distancing piece. So if you have any other further questions on that, I'd be happy to address those. But like I said, they're general guidelines, general precautions that we've had in place since the 30th.
Okay.
The second item, if you don't have anything on that, the second item that I want to go through is the phases for reopening. Phase 1 of the governor's ad astra plan, or Executive Order 2029, which specifically deals with Phase 1. So in this, the state has established a regulatory baseline for Kansas local governments. This baseline allows local authority to impose additional restrictions, but does not allow for less stringent measures. Under Executive Order 2029, local units of government cannot be less restrictive than the governor's plan. They may not allow business or activities that are explicitly prohibited in each phase. Pursuant to this restriction, I, as a county health officer, recommend that Ellis County follows the governor's plan for reopening and that we do not impose any additional restrictions. I further recommend that the County Board of Health and Ellis County Health Department do not make decisions as to the essential function of a business under KEF guidelines. This decision should be left to the individual business with their legal counsel. Businesses will be directed to follow industry standards, KDHE and CDC guidelines as they reopen and serve patrons. Businesses in Ellis County have a long-standing tradition of friendly, clean, and safe service. Business owners in Ellis County are well-suited and the most capable individuals to protect patrons and staff. They should use all resources, including Ellis County Health Department, to ensure the safety of all. Ellis County Health Department will continue to monitor the situation, including testing capabilities, case counts, and hospitalizations and deaths as they pertain to the state's health matrix. Ellis County Health Department will stand ready to change recommendations and advise the Commission as the situation determines. Currently, Ellis County as a combined healthcare community has tested 244 KDHE confirmed tests, and we believe it's actually more around 300. The KDHE had some issues for about 2 or 3 weeks where certain tests, the negative test results were not coming through their portal. So we actually think it's probably closer to 300, but there's 244 that are in our EpiTrack system. That's an average of 244, that's an average of 8.71 tests per 1,000. That is less than the Kansas average of 13.25 per 1,000. However, we've had 8 positives and 0 new cases since 4/17 of 2020. We have 0 hospitalizations to date and 0 deaths. We have a 3% average positive rate from our testing. That is significantly lower than the state's average, which is 13.6%. So 3% of our tests have come back positive, 13.6% of tests across the state have come back positive. So we're significantly lower. We are testing the right people. Like we've said from the start, no one has been turned away for lack of testing. They've been turned away because they don't have symptoms. Ellis County has trained 17 contact tracers from our partnership with Ellis County EMS and internal cross-training staff. Last week we took paramedics, EMTs, and our own internal staff. We cross-trained everybody as contact tracers. Or not all of our EMS staff, but 17 total people. The state recommendation is 15 to 30 per 100,000. If you extrapolate our 17 out, that actually gives us 60 per 100,000. So we are double the max recommendation that the state has for contact tracing. Ellis County is requesting an additional 2,800 test kits from the state to distribute to our community partners to ensure testing capability. We have at this point received 500 swabs from the state and will continue to request the additional 2,300. At this time, we have sufficient testing capacity, contact tracing ability, and have not had any new cases for 17 days. We have appropriate resources regarding hospital capacity and PPE to safely move forward. As we move through Phase 1, some businesses remain closed due to Executive Order 2029. These businesses include bars and nightclubs, excluding already operating curbside and carryout services, theaters, museums, and other indoor leisure spaces, including bowling alleys and arcades, fitness centers and gyms, nail salons, barbershops, hair salons, tanning salons, tattoo parlors, and other personal service businesses where close contact cannot be avoided. I empathize but can never truly understand the untold hardship placed on these businesses. I encourage compliance with this new order so that we can quickly and efficiently move to Phase 2 and continue our road to the new normal. As we work to define the new normal, it will take strategic partnerships with all levels, both public and private sector. I'm thankful for the cooperation and support of all of Ellis County as we work our way forward. As we increase testing and relax restrictions, we could see an increase in cases. The way to limit or eliminate this possibility is to continue to use best practices, including the things that are mentioned in the document in front of you, the things that are posted on KDHE and CDC guidelines, including staying home as much as possible, washing your hands frequently for 20 seconds with a hand sanitizer, avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth, distance yourself from others when in public, especially if you're senior or have a medical condition that puts you at a higher risk, covering your mouth and nose with a cloth mask when in public, covering coughs and sneezes with an elbow or tissue, clean and disinfect frequently touched surfaces daily, including phones, keyboards, doorknobs, handles, and light switches, protect and shelter the most at-risk and vulnerable in our population, including those over 65 and anyone with pre-existing medical conditions. For more information, we encourage all residents to access the documents posted on the Health Department website at ellisco.net or follow us on Facebook. Does have any further questions for me regarding the executive order or any questions regarding safety practices?
Did a good job covering them all.
Question for you.
Yep.
Currently, they're talking about providing a vaccine possibly by the end of the year, which is really fast-tracking it. Are you going to try to come up with a plan to vaccinate the population of Ellis County?
So we have not received any direction at this time from KDHE regarding really spooling up a plan for vaccination. Like from the start, and as you know, we will follow the KDHE guidelines and recommendations. H1N1, I believe they did that. They were able to get a vaccine out fairly quickly. If they do get a vaccine out, we'll follow KDHE, CDC guidelines, and we'll utilize best practices to treat the population as best we can.
Because there could be a large volume of people if that vaccine does arrive.
Yeah, and there's also an added piece of that in that we partner really well with HaysMed. We've worked really well with them through this. They have a huge catchment area, so there's even more people outside of Ellis County that would likely be coming here for that type of service. So we are we've got a large regional spread. We would obviously try to focus on taking care of our population first, but we would be remiss if we didn't think that there's going to be some additional people as well.
Okay. Commissioner Ross, any comments or
I
questions?
think I got the only question that I would have had, which was, can we do less than what the governor has said? And that is not an option, it sounds like.
Unfortunately, executive order really does limit. You can go above and beyond, but you cannot go less than the executive order. And the executive order is in 2-week phases. So the next one is 2 weeks from now. So we will attempt next Monday night. I'm hoping to come back before you guys so that we can start talking about Phase 2 and give people about a week of lead time. This time we just unfortunately couldn't because the guidelines came out late on Thursday, and we just didn't have that opportunity.
Correct, yeah.
Well, I have no intention of doing more than what the governor has asked of us.
Yeah, same here.
No, not at all.
There is a specific FAQ document that we have posted. I encourage all business owners to go to our website, the health department website at ellisco.net. There is a specific FAQ, facts and questions document that really addresses how many people can be in a restaurant, how many, what table makeup looks like. If they cannot get answers from that document, they can call us or email us at covid-19questions@ellisco.net. The best way is to send us an email so that we can actually push out some of that information and link the KDHE information to them.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks, Jason.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Is there anything else, Darren?
So with that, just make sure the commission's intention is still to open the offices tomorrow morning to regular business hours. at all locations except for the courthouse. They are still under a different order from the judge and magistrate, and they are, I don't know if you received those executive orders, but they've issued some stuff, but just getting them interpreted and getting Amanda to give us some information, the courthouse will remain closed at this point.
And I assume that is the commission's direction to proceed with opening tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And I would just encourage all employees to assess their own risk and do whatever precautions they deem is necessary. For the department heads, use sound judgment. If you think there's too many people coming in your department, you can hold some at the door in the lobby, tell them to come back later. Just use sound judgment, and we'll see what happens.
The final piece is the COVID-19 policy that we put in place about a month ago, which was set to be reviewed tonight at the May 4th meeting. With that, the pandemic pay part of it, where we went down to minimum staffing, alternate shift schedules and such, was to be reviewed. And we have got to the point, if we're opening offices back tomorrow, the pandemic pay should basically expire out of that policy.
Mm-hmm.
However, due to the scheduling of it, and I'd asked the sheriff to come just because I didn't want to speak to him, they have the alternate work schedule that they put in
Sure.
place to protect their jail staff and their deputies. So I'd like to have him explain that to you, just so everybody's on the same understanding.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ed Harbin, Ellis County Sheriff. I'll be short and sweet here. We'd like to keep our schedule going that we have right now. The road patrol will switch over to the normal schedule at the end of next week, and then the jail staff should switch over to its normal schedule at the end of May.
Okay.
And
I'm okay with that, gentlemen.
Yeah, just use your discretion on that.
Yeah.
As long
Just
as
for
it's-
the clarification, as with that schedule, the pandemic pay would stay throughout their rotation, so that way all shifts between the road crews and the jail staff follow through that schedule that they have set in place, so that the pandemic pay would stay in place for the sheriff's office, but
Correct,
none of
yeah.
the others.
it's just basically the scheduling. They're working 12-hour shifts, so we have people on, people off, people, making sure they're at home, staying healthy.
Do you think that'll issue any kind of problems with your budget authority by the end of the year, or?
No, it shouldn't. It should have
Okay.
very minimal.
Very
I
good.
think Scott had projected it may help with savings on a little bit of cost for overtime and such. 'Cause-
Okay.
I
Very
mean, we
good.
looked at several different schedules, and this one worked out the best,
Okay,
cost-wise and coverage-wise.
very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Okay, we don't need a motion or anything? Okay, great. Moving on. 2020 pay adjustments, Darren.
As the commission was aware, last month, a plan was presented to the commission in regards to your request to look at salary adjustments for 2021. After some consideration, the commission decided to push that back and take a different approach with that. Before you tonight is the same proposal, but just looking at different dates to make sure those implementation dates were at the right time for what the budget could afford. After looking at those and then taking into considerations of existing salaries, change in positions, change of status, change of health care, we were able to make the budget adjustments by making departmental adjustments overall. And as the commission was aware, when we did the math several weeks ago, we were at roughly $110,000 overall remaining for what the commission would want to address with the pay adjustments. With that, and then with making all the different considerations, changes that I just said with individual department budgets, that total amount dropped down to that $60,514, I believe, is what it was, which was significantly less than what was budgeted. So some of the raises would be, I guess, enveloped within their own budget. They wouldn't have to be increased as much as we originally planned
Sure.
to be able to implement the same pay raises or pay adjustments as before. So with that, I just open up, I guess, for your discussion if you have any questions.
And this does take care of the final steps of that evergreen study?
Correct. This would complete that. It completes the employees that are within their their step from years 1 through 5, or 1 through 4, but however, because of the way they were implemented in a multi-year phase, when you implement one phase, you're going to miss some from the phase before that were in the phase that you're doing, but now they fall into the year before. So there's some 5 and 6 year employees depending on their anniversary date that they fall into, and it should take care of the rest of all the employees that didn't get the step increases to get them onto that current evergreen study, and then the 1.6% COLA for the remaining employees of the county.
Okay.
The only
Your numbers, so that come in 79,000 less than what was budgeted.
correct $79,684 less than.
Almost 80,000 less than what was budgeted. Good.
Yeah, that's good.
We like good news. We can put the evergreen study on the shelf.
Or in file 13.
Or file 13.
I will make a suggestion when we move forward with a new county administrator, he or she, I think our pay policy plan needs to be looked into and redeveloped a little bit, hopefully with some experience on who he or she may be, get us a plan going forward with next year's salary adjustments and such, whether it be COLA, merit, sliding the scale, the different options. But most of that policy was created around that evergreen policy. And now if we can get that behind us, I think a new plan moving forward would be good.
I believe that evergreen study, at the time we'd done that, cost about $40,000.
I believe
I
we're
think
right,
you're
40
exactly
or 50.
right.
And I don't know that I'd ever be interested in doing another one.
Me neither.
So.
That was a nightmare.
Yes, it was. Absolutely.
A lot of it didn't even pertain to employees of Ellis County.
Mhm.
That was done. It was a mess.
Yeah, I don't think a group from Florida had any clue about how people are paid in our county, just looking at our road and bridge issues that we had during the entire process of that. So I'd agree with that.
Okay, gentlemen, any discussion about the pay increase?
I would like to discuss just a few things. I will support the step increases, but getting projected unemployment numbers in Ellis County from the March 21st to April 25th range, and doing some extensive research on the idea of cost of living adjustments and merit pay and how essentially most of the free market works, as the value of labor has decreased in Ellis County because of oil. And because of that, so has the cost of a lot of the goods that we consume on a consistent basis, namely gasoline for common people. And the state of our county right now, we know that we are going to take a huge hit on our budget. We have no idea if our sales tax numbers are going to be coming in the way that we expected that they would when we passed. Because of that, I think we budgeted for this, hoping that everything would be in great shape. Now I don't feel like I can support a pay increase based on COLA, but I do want to get that evergreen study behind us. I believe that some of the most important employees in that 1 through 5 range are the ones that would be impacted the most, potentially by the issue of COLA, which is that you have a quantity of items, and that quantity of items went up, and we're at the lowest end of the pay scale. Therefore, we don't want employees that are struggling to get by paycheck to paycheck, so we need to make sure that they get paid properly for that. Otherwise, I can't find myself in alignment with the idea of COLA on a consistent basis. And so I feel like in the state of this county, in the state of what looks like will be an almost 10% unemployment rate, I would like to get that evergreen study behind us so we can work better at a more aggressive way of rewarding great staff and not rewarding staff that isn't doing above and beyond work. But that's where I'll come in on this, and how a motion is made, that's how I feel about it.
Commissioner Hazelhorst.
I kind of side with Commissioner Rhodes over there. I've never liked these studies. I think employees should be rewarded off, You know, how they work, they show up for work, they're doing a good job. You know, I've never liked this just straight across, give everybody a pay increase. I've never
You know,
never
I
liked that.
I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Hazelhorst. We all like people who show up for work every day, do what they're supposed to do. That's what we expect from people. They
Exactly.
shouldn't be paid extra for doing that. That's what we expect.
I know.
And so when we get into the issue of merit pay, it's going to be very, very difficult to set benchmarks for
Yeah.
all of these different positions.
Because we have so many.
We have so many, and all the departments are different. A benchmark for one department is different from a benchmark for the other.
I think that's maybe working with our department heads too. They might be able to shed some light on some of that. I mean, and you know that when you was a department head, how many different people you just had in your department.
Sure.
And if you had to grade each one on a different pay, it'd be very difficult,
Could be, yeah.
you know, and I think that's something we need to research more on, how it'd be a very good way of doing that instead of just straight across raises all the time.
Yeah, and I think our department heads can help us with the flexibility of that in the future. I do feel like we are fair pay at Ellis County. We are probably aggressive on the packages that we give for benefits, and that's good because it means that we run full staff a lot of times. And right now, we're running full staff even at Road and Bridge, which has been a constant struggle to get applicants for. So my struggle with this is I feel like if we opened a position right now, we would likely have a line out the door of applicants, good applicants. And typically in business, when you have struggling times like this, you look for the best employees that you can find. And if someone is not happy with the pay that they get, we are not forcing them to do the job that they're doing in Ellis County. They are free to leave, but we have a great staff. We have great employees. The idea of a COLA pay when we're about to see 10% unemployment and record low commodity prices doesn't seem like it would be in line with what our voters would want from us.
Well, Commissioner Ross, I'm going to disagree with you on that issue. First of all, we did commit to COLA pay. We negotiated that in good faith with our employees. Our employees had nothing to do with the state of this economy. This has nothing to do with it. The politicians have forced this on everyone. During this whole virus pandemic, we've had a majority of our employees out in the public each and every day doing their jobs. In the law enforcement, they're even working 4 hours extra a pay period and not asking for overtime. I think this is something the employees have put trust in the commission to fulfill, and I think it's our obligation to fulfill it. Given the adjustments on the pay scale, we are still leaving quite a bit of money on the table. I'm sure the employees we have would be appreciative of the cost of living. We did adjust pay scales back in January, I think, for some of the elected officials. And I think it's only fair we follow through with this, just as we have told the employees we would do. Commissioner Hazelhorst, any comments about that?
Well, I'm back to that evergreen study again. I mean, that's been on somebody's shelf, Donna's or somebody's back there in that office for, I don't know how long, forever. And I mean, I know we've committed to doing that, and I feel we need to just get that done. Because we still have positions, and Bill Ring will attest to this, we still have positions out of Public Works that are clear below where they need to be, you know? And I think he'll agree with me on that. He says yes. And I mean, we need to get, I think, that evergreen study out of the way, and then in the future, look to see how we're gonna do this going forward.
What do you feel about the COLA, the 1.6%?
Well, with the evergreen study, doesn't that comes into play, doesn't it, in the 1.6, or not?
No. The Evergreen study basically gets the remaining, I believe there was 63 employees, that gets them onto their current step based on their years of service within their position. The COLA helps keep your salaries throughout the county in line with what market value at that time was presented. So I guess in one way you could say it's not, but in the other way you could say it is, because it helps keep your salaries adjusted to what the market is flexing to each year. So by not giving a COLA, you're not accounting for their employees' salary adjustments for what the market's doing, inflation's doing, et
Because
cetera.
under that discussion, maybe I read that quite a few times, and maybe I thought that was included in the Evergreen study, then the COLA comes later on.
Correct. It's been a kind of a twofold process in the pay. Is one is I can't remember exactly what each step was between the 5 different steps over the last 5 years. But each of the prior years, it's been that way. Is you would identify this group of individuals, give them their step increases based on where they're at on the scale, how many years of service they've been. And then because that would only, when we first started, we only captured a smaller amount of employees, depending on which range they're in. But then to capture all the remaining employees who would not be impacted, which would then just keep them behind market, they were given the COLA raise to help maintain with that. So say, for instance, 1.6 this year, I don't remember what the last 4 years would be, but if you take the 1.6 times the 5-year average, you'd be looking at, and not giving a COLA raise, you'd basically be 9% below where you should have been if you wouldn't have given COLA raises each year.
It just helps keep the salary scale adjusted.
Correct.
Of course, as Commissioner Roth alluded to, when we look at the COLA for next year, that might go down. It might be negative. It just could, because of what's going on in the economy now. But this was reflective from last year.
Correct. I don't remember the exact dates for when they determine COLA dates, if it's from
I
the
think it was October.
federal
something.
fiscal year
Yeah.
or what, but it was determined back a ways ago already.
It was definitely a whole different animal of an economy when those discussions were had. I will say that from my perspective, I do have shareholders in my company, and I view the taxpayer as a shareholder in Ellis County government, and I cannot imagine the heads that would spin right now if I told them I was going to increase my pay or increase any of my employees' pay in a business in Ellis County. Whether it be for COLA or anything, a good comment that was made was market value for labor. And the market value of labor is down in Ellis County.
And I understand that because we have people laid off. On the other hand, if someone walks out here to Public Works and wants to be a truck driver or a mechanic, and we know we're going to present them an offer that's below par, but either accept it or hit the road, that's just taking advantage of people at that point too. It's using leverage against them instead of being what's fair. If we don't adjust the cost of living, bill ring scale falls behind the scale even further than it was. Next year, like you say, as jobs are going to be more in demand, that might work, but as soon as the economy comes back, bill's off the chart again.
And I don't mind looking at Bill's chart in the future. I just don't believe that in the state of the current economy that we should be offering any kind of pay raise. It's somewhat of a concession to me to try to get out from under that Evergreen study and the idea that it's our 1 to 5 year employees that makes that palatable. But fairness of work is such an open-ended idea. And if we don't concentrate on the shareholders, the people who have paid taxes in this county for a lot of years, who are now losing their jobs, to protect them and their property taxes, protect them and their sales taxes in whatever way that we can. I know that the value of labor is different, and we are never holding a gun to anybody's head asking them to work for Ellis County. They're taking a job free and clear as a free person and accepting the job or not taking it.
That's correct, but when a person's down and out, it's easy to take advantage of them. Gentlemen, do I hear a motion about this?
Not yet. I guess I have more questions.
Sure.
I guess going to be reflected towards Darren. So going back on this Evergreen study that come in, basically, were the $60,000 at $79,000 less than budgeted. But factoring the COLA back in, the 1.6, that goes back to the 140?
No, so we originally had, and I would have to look at the exact numbers. So if you bear with me on breaking it down how we get
Sure.
there.
And you can do an average, which is fine, don't have to be exact.
Roughly had 155,000 scheduled for, that's actually budgeted last year for this year's raises. In the beginning of the year, the commission approved about $13,000 in raises for elected officials and two other employees in the county, which took us down to roughly 140,000. That 140,000, if the discussion that we had a couple weeks ago, that if the COLA came in at below the 2%, we would take that and factor it into the money we had allocated. So when it came in at 1.6 instead of 2%, that was 80%. So if we took that 80% at the 140,000, that took us down to roughly 110,000 that we would then spend on pay raises for the year. Then we would have to determine at that point when we could implement them based on what that dollar figure is compared to what type of raises we would give. And that's how we got down to the 110. But then when I started looking at our employee cost spreadsheets and updating the formulas and correct pay raises, longevity, how it equates out to CAPERS, KPNF, FICA, work comp, et cetera, making sure all of those numbers were correct and added together, that's when we came up with having only that $60,000 instead of $110,000 to make those pay raises, pay adjustments throughout the entire.
But that 60,000 does include the cost of living as well as the step adjustments.
Correct, both of them.
Okay.
And that takes care of the Evergreen study and the 1.6?
Correct, both of them. And that would, basically what that does is that roughly $79,000, $80,000 that would be left would stay, if the commission decides to move with this plan or change it, whatever money with whatever decision is left stays in the budget stabilization account.
Sure.
And basically becomes as a rollover to help build unencumbered cash at the end of the year for next year.
I guess as much as I'd like to get rid of this Evergreen study, gentlemen, I'd like to see this tabled.
I don't mind talking about it at a future date. I will say that the idea of taking advantage of employees, I don't like. We're not lowering the wage of any of our employees with this. We're keeping them steady. We're doing as government always does and is okay because they can go to the taxpayer at any time. I will say that without the sales tax passing, we would likely be looking at furloughs in Ellis County. We would be down $600,000 more dollars. We would not be balanced in our budget, and we would be burning cash. So the taxpayers came to us and helped us keep a managed, balanced budget. I don't think they would be happy with us doing a pay raise shortly after that, especially in the state of this economy.
I guess I would like to see this tabled for 60 days. That's my opinion as of now. What my fellow commissioners think, but I'd like to see it tabled for 60 days.
I'll go along with that, Dean.
Dustin,
Yeah,
how do
I
you feel?
don't mind killing it. I'd like to see how this economy rebounds. I think we could really, what we left was probably the best economy that ever existed in the history of the world for COVID-19. So if we can hit go on the economy and we can see these projected unemployment rates back where we normally would, at that point I know we do have to be aggressive about our pay, but at that point I'll also know that we have tax revenue that's coming in. So I'm happy with the table too. That's fine by
Like
me.
the first Monday in July, gentlemen, is that fair?
Works for me.
Darren, you want
First
to put that
Monday
on
in
the
July,
list?
Darren.
First meeting in July, let's revisit this. I don't know what
Correct.
that- You want me to tell
Okay.
you?
Well, I believe July 4th is that right around there as well, but I won't be here, so we'll just have to look at,
It'd be July 6th is the first Monday,
I'll just have to work with whoever's filling in for me that week.
or July 13th.
Darren's going to love redoing the math on this too.
Yes.
He's already told me
Takes
how
a lot
fun
of
that
work.
is.
Let's look at July 13th, Darren.
Okay.
That way you're,
Okay, we'll table that issue till July 13th. Okay, our next issue is the road improvement bond. Darren?
As the commission discussed several weeks ago at the road tour, I believe was April 20th, we looked at a couple different projects, well, about a dozen projects throughout the county that Public Works is facing on different road and bridge improvements. We totaled up those projects with an estimate on how much it would cost to replace them, and the commission asked me to go ahead and continue to work with our financial consultant on looking at a bond over the next couple years to help capture the cost of some of those and start getting them taken care of. Within the packet, as you can see, there's a couple different options. What I had asked them to provide us some information on was looking at it roughly with what we are seeing for the quarter-cent general purpose sales tax. Our expected revenue is roughly about $650,000 to $660,000 with what we originally planned on. However, when speaking with the Department of Revenue, they expect it to be higher than that, potentially $700,000 to $715,000. But even with that, just with the fluctuation of sales tax and not knowing exactly where we're at, I asked them to give us a max payment of $600,000 a year and how that would extrapolate out between a 5-year and a 10-year bond. And so that's what you have in your packet. A 5-year bond would be able to get us about $2.8 million, which was not. It's only about 2/3 of what we actually need for the projects that we identified, not giving us any wiggle room for any higher costs or estimates on any of those projects. And a 10-year bond was about $5.4 million. And with that, there's a couple pages on how those bonds would be paid out, as well as a schedule on if the commission would like to proceed on those different projects or with the bond. It gives you a time frame of about 2 to 3 months on how long it would actually take to get the consultants here, discuss what it would take on their part, get the paperwork filed, get the bonds out, and have a closing date on them, which is roughly about a 2 to 3 month process. So it was a little quicker than what I anticipated. I was hoping to be able to push that off onto the new county administrator as much as possible. But we discussed potentially having Ranson Financial come up this month, but they got this information, and if we were still at a stay-at-home order for traveling and such, but now that has lifted, I didn't know if the commission would want them to come up maybe the 3rd week in May to speak a little bit further on how you'd like to proceed, and that way we'd have our county counselor here as well as any information, because there are statutes that we do have to follow. For instance, if we do bond it right away, there are statutes that say we have to have a certain amount expended within the first, I think, 6 months, and then about 80 of it expended within 3 to 4 years. So you can't just bond all the money and you can't just put it in a bank and gain more interest on it than you are paying in interest. So there's different things that we have to work out on that. But I just thought I would bring that to the commission's attention to see if you'd like to proceed with that or hold off for a while.
Okay. Discussion?
Darren, my big question will be, you said we had earmarked these projects. I'd like to see a list of those projects and how the projected costs of them. That way I know which ones we're talking about. And once I see that, then maybe, I always think on these road projects, if we can hold out the longer that we can before it becomes dangerous on the road or things like that, the more value we got out of the last time we worked on them. So as far as a bridge project or things like that, there's some things that are maintenance projects that I imagine could really help in terms of longevity of some of these things too. So we discussed on some of the bridges, doing the polymers and things like that, could really increase the life of that bridge by way, it seems like a really good financial investment for us, because that bridge then lasts quite a bit longer than it otherwise would have with a minimal investment. So if they got listed out, I think at that point we could discuss a bond that might be a little smaller or a little bigger or however, but at least we would be at a point where we knew what we were going to bond. The other big question mark on this for me, and I think we should have Ranson come and talk to us, is what projects are we going to partner with the city of Hayes on in this extraterritorial jurisdiction? I mean, we talked about 48th Street and they're owning half of the right-of-way and us owning half of the right-of-way and it being a problem street with a lot of taxpayers on it. Same way with Northwest Business Corridor. How much more is the city of Hayes willing to help on that project, if they're willing to help at all? Because I think those are big line items that could really change where the bond should be at and what we should bring out in a bond. And then maybe with Bill Ring's suggestion, what is the most pressing so that we can go after those first. Also, there's so many ifs on this. I see the question of how much of Cathedral going into that, talking to those guys in Victoria, none of us really knew where they were at, where we were at. And so now we've gotten it panned down a little better, and I'd like to see what they actually want us to do with our 24 feet and if they want to couple in on it to make it a better project or if they would just like us to handle that. So a lot of question marks, but I really, it's good information. I think the rates are really good. So I think we should do a bond. It's just a matter of how much and what projects we're going to attack immediately.
Yeah, I think you raised some very good points, Commissioner.
Yep, I agree with both of you. I mean, it's, the cathedral's gonna be a big project we need to know, and I know Bill has a list that he can supply us or supply to Darren, and kind of what's gonna be priority. I know that bridge north of Ellis, Saline River Bridge, that's
Yeah.
gonna be a huge project when that happens, and
That was the thing on that
timeline,
bridge.
and, you know, we just need to know.
Yeah, it's such a long bridge. The idea from me on that is as long as we can wait on it, maybe we can put capital together to widen it, make it safer, as opposed to just redecking or things like that. Although, you know, the deck does look pretty beat up on it, and maybe that's the thing that we have to do on this initial bond is get the deck fixed. I just know that most people that drive that bridge are probably less worried about the deck and more worried about the width of it, because it's not all that big for as high a traffic of a road as it is.
Bill?
Bill Ring, Public Works Director. We have, and when we went on the road tour, you absolutely saw conditions. I am seeking your input as well of what you feel are the priorities for the county, for the public, because we have more dollars in projects than you're going to ever bond out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the number one thought. So what staff would recommend may not be the pleasure of the gentleman at the front here. Okay, so that's why it's going to need both of us. In other words, if we think that we want to do, say, the cathedral loop through Catherine, and you all don't think that's a good idea, I don't want to do that, and, you know, then start the process over again.
Yeah.
We need to have this, you know, be very open two-way street discussion. And then when you look at putting off, and I know Dean has been through multiple seminars down there with Norm, the worst thing you can do is wait to fix roads. Absolute bottom line. There's a bell curve, and I didn't know to bring it tonight, but when you get to a point past the 10-year mark of roughly, the repair costs that you're going to spend to get it back are way more than it would cost you to maintain it. It's an absolute fact. And we've shown it. So be very careful in that, trying to get as much longevity. It's like they used to say about tires, they called them Maypops when I was a kid. You try to keep going, and it may pop at any minute. And we don't want that to happen. And likewise on the bridge, as we talked about, which would be Bridge 120, over this, the Saline River. It was pointed out to staff in 14 that bridge needed to be fixed. And it's just progressively gotten worse. And progressively the price has gone up with it. It's almost gone up, I don't know, 50%, a little more maybe increase from what it was. And we've put it off 2 years in a row. It was supposed to be done last year, supposed to be done this year. I'm not so sure widening is as much of a concern as it is the surface. And again, the longer we wait, the more it's going to cost. So, I mean, we might be able to, if we go out there And that's beyond that polymer that I showed you over by Walker. That bridge is way, way beyond that. So we don't want to wait too long, and it's very hard. I used to always tell my employees in Florida that it's the shoelace theory. They're going to break, you just never know when, and it'll always break at the worst time. So we have those considerations where you have, and you're correct, there's a multitude of unknowns and what ifs and should we and could we. So bear those things in mind, that we don't always do a benefit to the roads by holding off. It can actually cost us in the long run a lot more money. And then also consider, again, we'll use Bridge 120 as an example. That's a main traffic flow coming from Rooks County down towards, the city of Ellis and then over to Trigo, et cetera. We discussed that. If we did a deck replacement on that, we're probably going to shut that bridge down for 5 to 6 months. And it has to be done over the summertime because you can't do bridge work, concrete in the winter. So we get between harvests and different things. It would be because the bridge will be shut and the drive around up there is, 15, 20 miles.
Oh, yeah.
If we get to the point we need to put a bridge in, we could have that bridge out for a year plus, year and a half. By the time you design it, re-engineer it, try to figure out how we're going to pay for it. And if you want to wait till we have enough funding, right now it would probably be 3 times the money to put a new bridge in. If we wait 2 or 3 years trying to get the benefit of it, it could be, another $500,000, $750,000 more dollars. Depends on what and I don't know. So, these are all important things to consider in this discussion of how we really want to approach what we want the bond to go for. And then just the only other point that you asked about when you started your questions, as far as the joint projects, the major project that we have, but it's less in dollars, would be the 48th Street project, which is probably now to go from Tractor Supply basically to Hall Street. We're probably, without getting pricing on it, in the $150,000 mark to put a hot mix across that road.
Okay.
So that's minor compared to some of the other things that you saw.
And that's our share, that 150?
That's based on
That's
a year and a
total.
half ago, I think it was 125.
So that's total?
That was to go from Tractor Supply to Hall Street, to put a hot mix over it. To have someone, a contractor that does hot mix, we do not do that. To lay a new, 3 or
Sure.
two 2-inch layers, whichever. It's been a while since I looked at the estimates on it, but
Okay.
Considering the traffic on that road, that was less than I expected, honestly, and at a 50-50 split with the city, it might be appeasable to them. But those are, once again, the question marks that I think we got to figure out before we bond anything, because there is that ticking time clock on a bond. But, to the point, I understand what you're saying. I do understand the bell curve issue of a road completely being deteriorated and needing complete replacement.
look at the Catherine Blacktop.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yep.
We've tried to stretch, patch,
We pushed it along. Yep.
and now that road will need to be completely rebuilt.
Okay. So yeah, those are the type of things, but what I'm alluding to is the idea of if we had done a lot of work on feedlot blacktop before getting a build grant and then not really needing to have done as much work as we did. So that's where I want us to be careful on the bridge projects in terms of, and you say maybe the width isn't that big of a deal. I know a person who drives that road a lot, and he said, don't worry about the deck, worry about making it wider if you're going to spend money on it. So, this is just a perspective from outside, although it may be way more expensive than what.
Oh, I would guess $2 million to do what you're
yeah, to
asking.
widen that?
Minimum. So you could shoot half the bond on that. That's why I'm asking, and we need to have some serious discussions and serious input
Well,
to
$2
make
million
sure.
in 65 years of bridge. add a wider, safer way. So, or how much for a deck?
A deck's about $500,000 right now.
About 500,000, yeah, that's what it was last time.
Right.
I guess,
These are
Bill,
the
if you'll
discussions.
just, if you can put some rough numbers together from our road tour, the places we
Sure.
stopped, just rough numbers, I mean.
Right.
And
We're
maybe
gonna have
any
to get
other.
some engineers involved, This,
And
most of them.
just
work
kind
on-
of give us some rough numbers on the places we stopped, what it would cost, and that'll give us an idea to prioritize them, if that's good with you guys.
Sure.
Yeah, I've heard we've had a couple problem areas that are kind of slippery type of roads too. I would like to see on that what it would take, different surface, different things like that to prevent some of that.
Do you know which road, what?
The one that's always shut down on the way out on 40.
210.
Yes,
210,
yes.
yeah.
Maybe something to fix that.
That, it's called cash.
Yeah,
We have a 40-foot right-of-way on that. We have a wall of dirt on one side, and we have low on the other side.
okay,
We can't barely have but one lane now.
yeah.
We have no drainage ditches, and it's dirt. We would have to acquire right-of-way
Okay,
on both sides of the road for 3 miles, because they're between Old 40 and Spring Hill, or Golf Course, I'm sorry. Between that and Golf Course, you have 3 miles with no other access points.
okay,
So you have a major expense there to do that. You would have major dirt work because you've got to take the hill off of this side and try to move it to this side so that you could create a road. I would imagine, we looked at it,
But it's been 300,000-400,000 out there.
I think we talked about $750,000 just to try to get it to where it would be a usable rock road. Excuse me.
It's a deal, that's a project, that road.
And again, this brings back, and I hear about that road every day, Commissioner.
yeah.
What does the commission, which roads, because we have too many, is that a higher priority, that road, than Bridge 120?
Bridge 120 is pretty high priority.
Yeah,
Well, Bill, if you could get us a list of
Absolutely.
those
Yeah, I can do
projects
that.
with
But I just,
a
and if you have
approximate
other
cost.
input on what you think, or you want, more details or an option, like deck versus bridge, just let me know. Shoot me an email. And that way, with your input and your thought process, if we put that together, I think we can try to come up with a better hierarchy, maybe not in which is 1, 2, 3, but at least give you highest to lowest,
yeah,
so that you can say, okay, we know the highest project is $1.5 million, the lowest is 300. How can we then pick and choose to fill a $5 million bond? What's the best bang for the buck, as they say?
yeah. And I don't mind if we get that list put together, even running around on my own, at least assessing, the hazard involved. That's what I'm concerned about, is safety. And then I'm concerned because the voters have told us they want us to get infrastructure fixed in the county. They did it with a vote, so I'm ready to do that. We just got to target the projects.
Okay.
Okay. And then we probably should get the financial people up here to
So
talk
that's
about
going
the
to be my
bond.
next question. Do we, so what I'm hearing from staff is you would like Bill to create a list of projects
Mhm.
that we went on tour with. I would suggest maybe adding another 5 or 10 more, so that way we have a list of projects to exceed what we know we can go with
Sure.
for a bond. Have them get cost estimates, not necessarily engineered estimates, but working with one where we can get somewhat decent numbers, as well as have Public Works prioritize what they think as road and bridge expertise on what their prioritization is, because I would make the comment that if certain individuals have certain concerns with projects, a bridge that they may have issues with, it doesn't mean it's necessarily the worst one in the county. There may be another one that's somewhere else that may be higher prioritized, that has more of a structural or an issue.
Yeah.
But we can get those cost estimates, the list of projects, the totals, and prioritize, bring them back to the commission, and then you can see their estimates, their priorities, and then we can reorganize what the commission feels best on those priorities That'll give us a good idea what the bond would be. I don't know if Bill could have that done by the third commission meeting,
Oh, yeah.
and we could maybe just,
You want just regular some ballpark estimates so we can work.
Mhm.
then we maybe, you can, the commission could look at those numbers, as well as talk to the, potentially if I can get the Ranson Financial up here the same night, and just have a overall idea what we're looking at,
Mhm.
if that sounds like a decent plan or not.
Look at those numbers, add 30%, right, guys?
Yeah, probably.
That's it.
Yeah, that
I
sounds
think
great.
we can work with that, Darren.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, county administrator report. Darren?
I just had a couple things I put on your chairs, the reopening plan.
Mm-hmm.
I made a highlighted area on yours on page 17 in regards to your concession stands at the Speedway.
Yep.
And Jason referred to the frequently asked questions document as to regards to phase 1. That is with you as well. The only two things I wanted to add on top of that was the courthouse bathroom projects is complete. They've started cleaning up there. The building and grounds crew is starting to resurface the floors. Get all the, and there have some inmates up there cleaning the courthouse because it got pretty dusty. So we got a punch list coming soon to get that project complete. So that actually worked out in our benefit with having the courthouse closed. I guess I had 3. Just wanted to announce that the Ellis County Fire Department was selected to host the 2022 Kansas State Firefighters Association Conference up at the Hilton Garden Inn.
Wow.
So that was good news for us. We didn't think we'd get it, and we didn't have to bid or spend any money on it because we had a virtual conference this year. And then the third is, just as a reminder, we have upcoming budget hearings later this month on May 14th and 15th. By the end of this week, department heads and elected officials should get all of their updated budgets to me. So that way I can get those out to you hopefully next week with everything updated, with a pretty good overall stance of where we're looking at financially for the forecast or for the budget next year. I will say at this point of where we're at with all the numbers that the commission has given me, all the direction, all the changes that you'd like to see. From what I could see is about the first year in 10 years we actually have a budget surplus instead of a budget deficit for Ellis County. That all could change. That budget surplus takes into account cutting our oil and gas by more than 50%. A lot of different things. So some of those numbers we won't know. Health insurance rates are in there.
Sure.
The different cost percentages. But so that's a little bit of, I guess, good news to finish off tonight, that at least we're looking at a budget hearing with the commissions with a budget surplus instead of a budget deficit.
Okay,
Very
well, that's
good.
good news.
That's all I got.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks, Darren.
Okay, county commission reports. Commissioner Hazelhorst.
Yes, today on the KAC board that I sit on, our chair did send a letter to the governor today asking about the property tax instead of being due May 15th, I believe, if that could be extended out. Quite a few people on the board did contact their treasurers to see how that was coming in. I did contact ours this morning at 10 o'clock. I have not heard back from her yet. I did leave a message with her staff up front, so waiting to see how much we have collected, I guess, in the county. A lot of the counties have collected about 50% already. So, but we did send a letter, our chair did, to the governor to see if we can
Okay.
waive that for maybe an additional 60 days. We'll see what happens. Dr. Roger Marshall did call today, talked to him for a while. He was just checking in on Ellis County, see how we're doing oil-wise and farming-wise, so shared a lot of that with him today. He's been working in southwest Kansas, helping treat patients with the coronavirus, so he's now back in Great Bend, and I guess he has to be quarantined now until, I guess, 14 days. But he said he had to wear the full suit, just like he said when he was in the Army. It was a full chemical suit, but he said the Army suit was definitely even more uncomfortable than the one he had to wear. He said the one day he had to wear while he was working down there wasn't too bad. So, but he did tell everybody hi and just thank Ellis County for what we're doing on our level and keep up the good work. All I have.
Okay, Commissioner Roth?
Yeah, I just have a couple things to report on. First of all, I just want to thank you guys for the road tour. It was interesting. I think we gained a lot of knowledge about the conditions of the roads. Honestly, I was pleasantly surprised, driving around how good our roads look. So credit to Bill and the staff on doing as good a job as they do, even though I know it can be tough. And they are obviously a department that takes probably the most complaint calls in all of Ellis County, just because it's a lot of road infrastructure to deal with. Secondly, I'd like to address a letter that was sent out by the Treasury. I think we're going to have to look at her budgetary line items, including printing and binding postage. While the bulk of Ellis County citizens are worried about unprecedented low prices in commodities, including oil, livestock, and grains, 10% unemployment, and hoping to get back to work, our treasurer found it in her budget to mail a summer newsletter to every household in the county, two-sided print, full color on glossy stock, with a quote at the bottom that says, "Feel good, don't worry, be happy." Frankly, I would feel much more happy if I didn't feel like my tax dollars were going to what, in my opinion, looks like an election document, of which contain multiple errors, most egregiously the idea that somehow our commission has approved almost $1 million in outside agency funding. Funny, I don't remember doing that. I also know for a fact that outside agencies have not even submitted requests for outside agency funding. She also thought it would be fun to discuss spending done on other departments, but failed to mention her trip to Washington, D.C. that was taxpayer funded. Yes, Ellis County buys road graders. We have an entire fleet of them, and they need to be upgraded on a consistent basis. Sometimes we even get deals on floor models and figure out creative ways to save money on financing with lease options. I only bring this up because I understand the nuances of county government can be lost with much of the voting public. When our commission approves spending authority for a department, it is only approved with the understanding that it does not all need to be spent, and that the funding requests are made with the intent of doing the best job with the dollars budgeted. I believe we need to take a closer look at this budget in the coming months, and the taxpayers need to do their part to keep this kind of spending in check. Be assured that this type of mailer has absolutely zero other elected officials' blessings or help. We can only discuss these things after the fact and make adjustments in the coming budget years. How our treasurer thought this was a good idea was beyond my comprehension. However, she is an elected official. She does have the right to spend wisely or waste money in whatever way she deems necessary, with only our power of the purse to protect the voters. That is all.
Commissioner, you have any idea what that costs by chance?
I would imagine around $5,000. We spent $3,000 on a black and white to send to every door direct mail. This is quite a bit more expensive, full color. Even has a picture of her at the bottom with sunshine and grass and other things on it.
Commissioner Ross, when I got my letter, I read it, it upset me. I told the wife, this is nothing but a damn political ad paid for by the taxpayers. And I threw it down. I have no report.
Commissioners, I do have one executive session I would like to have this evening, if we have
Okay,
time.
do we
Yes.
make a motion?
I will. I'll move that the Board of County Commissioners recess an executive session under the following exemption to the Kansas Open Meetings Act, if I can read. Pursuant to the non-elected personnel matter exemption to discuss the county administrator search. And those persons to attend are the three commissioners, interim director Darren Meyer, and Bill Jeter, county councilor.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
For how
Aye.
long?
Oh, I'm sorry. 15 minutes, guys? 15? I think 15, we can cover it pretty quick.
15 minutes?
Yeah,
I second that.
thank you.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0.
It's time to stand anyway, guys.
Donna away from her desk.
Yes. There's no action, and the meeting will adjourn at 6:33.
Thank you.
Donna.
See you all.
Yep.